Welcome back for another video. The Expert Series is back for GW18. If you're new around here, every game week questions get sent out to our hundreds of experts involved, including their transfer plans, captaincy, chip usage and experts tips. Between them all, they finished in the top 100 in the world 5 times, top 1k 55 times and 344 finishes in the top 10k. Hit subscribe so you don't miss out on following this series for the rest of the season. So it's an exciting manager highlight to kick the video off. 18 game weeks in, we have our first expert in the top 1k. Gregorio scored 79 points with a -4 hit last weekend, which took him up to 895th overall. We've got 11 participants in the top 10k now. Sondra got the biggest score of 86 points. Did you manage to beat the expert's average score, which was 66 points? In case you missed it, we've just had news regarding the Bournemouth and Luton fixture. It's going to be replayed in full at a later date as a double game week, so not all is lost if you brought in Bournemouth players. It does mean though the points from that match are voided now, so therefore auto subs, vice captaincies and rankings have all updated. There's no urgency to rearrange the postponement, so it's anyone's guess when it moves to. Man City vs Brentford on the other hand has pressure to be rearranged, so it could be game week 24 or 25 that it drops into. Onto the experts transfer activity then. This week 27% are rolling, 66% are spending one transfer and 6% are making 2 transfers. All but one of those managers making 2 transfers are taking a -4 this week. We also have one wildcard active this week from a manager already in a position of strength at 13k overall. He shared his wildcard with us, which we'll run through shortly. Let's dig into the players they're bringing into their teams and selling for Gaming 18. Unsurprisingly, their top transfer in this week is Watkins, 27% have picked him up. As such, 15% have sold Darwin. It is the logical move this week given Darwin faces Arsenal, who are topping the league for expected goals conceded, and Watkins faces Sheffield United, who are worst for XGC. This chart from FPL Radar illustrates that nicely. The top bar is the team's non-penalty XG, and the bottom bar is their opponent's expected goals conceded, so it's a big mismatch between Villa and Sheffield United. The only fixture with a bigger discrepancy is Newcastle vs Luton, though it's harder to identify where Newcastle's points are going to come from, given Gordon's potential injury, and Wilson and Isak both rotation risks. On a free hit, Wilson makes some sense, assuming Isak isn't back. 3% are transferring Wilson in. We won't get any news from Howe pre-deadline. Gordon probably a hold though, as it might have just been a contact injury rather than anything more serious. It was a pretty dreadful challenge from Caicedo and Gordon in the first half in the League Cup. 10% have transferred Pedro Porro and Richarlison in. Richarlison is actually in the 100th percentile for expected goals and shots, and the 94th percentile for touches in the box. Really impressive underlying numbers if he can sustain those for some good fixtures on the horizon. And as we know, after Game Week 20, Son leaves for the Asian Cup where he'll be their main man. Some are looking at the Villa defence, who are favourites on the clean sheet odds this week with a 51.5% chance. 6% are picking up Konsa, 3% going for Pau Torres. We should get news from Emery on Pau's fitness before the deadline, who is currently yellow flagged, and he wasn't spotted in Villa's training footage, though some other players weren't seen either. A further 5% have made the call on selling Haaland, who was heavily sold last week and he dropped straight out of the experts team. The right call given he did miss out in the end, though pretty unfortunate if Solanke was the replacement. With all that Haaland money in hand, there's a lot of cheap defenders leaving their teams this week. Maguire, Taylor, Tsimikas and Guehi. 8% are transferring Trippier in, 2% getting Trent. To repeat a point on Trippier from earlier this week, he's in a dreadful patch of form as we know. He hasn't looked the same since he pulled out of England duty for personal reasons. In every loss in December he's played a major part in. There was the 2 goals against Everton, a slow reaction versus Son for Tottenham's first 2, there was a mistake or a slip in Milan's equaliser in the Champions League, and then in the League Cup a weak header back to Dubravka was pounced on by Mudryk who scored, and then he missed his penalty in the shootout. Newcastle's first clean sheet in the last 5 games in all competitions came during his suspension. Whatever the cause for the drop-off, let's hope he can get over it soon, as he's carried Newcastle on his back at times and he's an elite player. It's a tough call between him and Trent this week if you are looking for a premium defender. Newcastle have got the better shorter term fixtures before they play Liverpool Man City in Game Week 20 and 21. Will Howe continue to play Trippier, or will he give him a rest in one of the next 2, which it looks like he desperately needs? If you are picking up a premium defender, then the route back to Haaland gets a bit trickier. If he's back for Game Week 20 when they're home to Sheffield United, then if you own Salah, the solution could be downgrading him when Salah's got Newcastle and then upgrading a forward to Haaland. If Haaland's not back until after Game Week 20, then it's much simpler, as Salah and Son are both sells then, and they free up all the money you need. On the subject of AFCON and the Asian Cup, I put together a table here with some of the main FPL assets who are expected to leave for those competitions. Some other notable names include Mitoma, Anana for Man United, Wang, Visser, Jackson, Kudus and Adingra. Something to be aware of if you've got multiple players leaving. The graphic on the right is from Rob T FPL, which shows how long players will be away, dependent on how far they progress in the cup. For example, a group stage knockout will rule them out for Gameweek 21 and 22 max. If they go all the way to the final, which is certainly possible for Salah and Son, they may not be back to Gameweek 25 or 26. Onto the experts' chip usage, and as a reminder, Gameweek 20 is the last opportunity to use your first wildcard or you lose it. Just 7% of the experts have got theirs left still, which is very impressive patience. Apo's got his wildcard active this week. Even more impressively, he's reached 13k overall with all his chips intact until now. Apo's wildcard is active for Gameweek 18 and his team is as follows. He's got Dubravka in goal, in defence Pedro Porro, Konsa and Trent. In midfield it's Richarlison, Palmer, Salah, Son and Saka, and up top he's got Watkins and Solanke. A strong bench as well with Raya, Colwell, Semenyo and Saliba. Here's what he had to say. Wildcard is now active after leaving Gameweek 17 with 7 flagged players due to injuries and suspensions. I would have preferred to play it in Gameweek 20 for an easy route to Haaland if he was fit by then, but FPL doesn't always go the way you plan. The current draft I've made is very likely going to be the team I have come Thursday's deadline. There are still a few players, especially in defence, which I'm going to be tinkering down to the wire. I'm torn between Trent and Trippier. I feel like there isn't much between them, but Trippier's performances lately haven't been up to the regular standards, whereas Trent's look great, so I'm currently on Trent. The second goalkeeper alongside Dubravka is the position that I'm most up in the air. If Bournemouth get a double game week announcement, I'll possibly go with Neto. Currently I'm on Raya since he rotates well with Dubravka, and Arsenal got a strong side defensively. However, I am aware that it blocks me from getting a third Arsenal outfield player if I want one later. For me, the midfield pretty much picks itself, and there aren't any players I currently swap out unless we get any surprising news. Originally, I'd planned to go for Gordon over Richarlison, but Gordon's injury against Chelsea in the Carabao Cups made me do the switch. Up front, Watkins and Solanke are locked since they're nailed. They've got good underlying numbers and they've got good immediate fixtures. Semenyo is my third striker who will likely just sit last on the bench, but he might come in handy if they were to announce a double game week for Bournemouth. Best of luck on the wildcard, Apo, and thanks for sharing. Let's move on to Gameweek 18 captaincy. We'll keep this segment brief as it's very one-sided. 92% are on Captain Watkins, followed by 5% on Son and 3% on Salah. Over the last 6 game weeks, only Solanke and Haaland have racked up a higher expected goals than Watkins. He's got 18 returns in 17 games this season. Could Spurs end Everton's run of 4 games in a row without conceding in the league? Son's certainly differential in captaincy terms this game week, as is Salah. Last game week was Salah's first blank of the season at Anfield, though Arsenal's defence is just ridiculous at the moment. Obviously they conceded 3 to Luton in that 4-3 match due to 2 keeper mistakes. Outside of that though, they've conceded just 4 goals all season. FPL Review Projections has Watkins top this week with 6.5 points, however Son's close behind with 6.1, followed by Douglas Luiz and then Salah. The Gameweek 18 goalscorer probabilities are in agreement with Watkins top and a 46.5% chance of scoring any time. Son's in second with a 40.5% chance. Salah's been given a 33.5% chance. Good news if you own Salah and Trent though, both got a rest in Liverpool's League Cup fixture against West Ham, both named on the bench. Darwin and Tsimikas started that one. Areola also started as well, which is interesting. Moyes could be getting some game time under his belt before Man United, or maybe now he's a cup keeper. Pick your narrative. Onto the Gameweek 18 experts team. If you appreciate the work that goes into each video, hit like to support the channel and make sure you subscribe and to follow this series every game week. The experts team is as follows. It's Dubravka in goal, in defence Tsimikas, Pedro Porro and Saliba, in midfield Salah, Son vice captain, Gordon, Saka and Palmer, and up top Watkins and Solanke. The bench has Areola, Darwin, Taylor and Gabriel. You could make the case for starting Taylor if you've got him. He's back from suspension, but he is away to Fulham, who have been scoring plenty recently. They've got 13 goals in their last 4 games, and Burnley have only got 1 clean sheet this season. Small tweak to the layout. I've changed the colours on the ownership percentages to show more clearly which players the experts like, shown in green, and which players they're less keen on, shown in red. Haaland's ownership last game week just 14%, and he was around 70% overall, which shows just how fast they reacted to the injury. Palmer's got a whopping 91% ownership. He's the second most owned player, and he's been an absolute gift in FPL. 6 goals and 4 assists since making his full debut for Chelsea. The same number of goals and assists that Haaland has since then, albeit Palmer has played more minutes after last game week. Darwin's ownership continues to bleed, and we might see Alvarez head the opposite way, taking his spot in the team Game Week 19 onwards. Playing with a front 8 could be the best strategy to manage all the players leaving for AFCON and the Asian Cup in their FPL teams. On the one hand, it does give you a benching headache when you've got 5 mids and 3 forwards that you can all use. But let's say you can only sell Salah in Game Week 21 and then you've got to sell Son in Game Week 22. It's a non-issue in your team even if he blanks because you've got 7 other mids and forwards that you can play. The depth will also come in handy in case of any surprise benchings this month. After all, there's still 3 deadlines before month end. Every game week we ask the experts for their tips and thinking for the game week. MLK says, it could prove useful to carry 2 transfers going forward in anticipation for the Bournemouth and Luton and the Man City and Brentford rescheduled fixtures, i.e. double game weeks. FPL Dan Cross says, time to suck it up and get rid. Darwin has not been an evolutionary transfer in the slightest. Alex, Medium Boys, says, definitely going Alvarez to Watkins, I can't avoid him any longer. Leaning towards captaining him over Son as well, but I decided at the last minute. I'm curious to see what the captain polls are like. Now you know, 92% Watkins. Flair Player says there's probably no right answer on what to do with Haaland this week, but in any case you need a Haaland plan for the next few game weeks. And lastly, FPL Spaceman says, I believe it was Archimedes who once said, a -4 is a -2 in a blank game week. Thanks very much for watching as always. We're going to be live for the deadline right here, so make sure you subscribe for that. See you soon.